continue to put out there. Now, with those two last points in mind, in terms of apparently ending poverty and apparently ending hunger, although of course not, energy is very relevant to this because increasingly it takes up ground that could otherwise produce food. But what is the latest?
Well, the latest is that today the energy regulator Ofgem has announced a 2% rise of the energy price cap for the period covering October to December 2025. Now, this is more than expected, and it means that a household using a typical amount of energy will pay £1,755 a year, which is £35 more than the current cost cap. But if we look how the energy price cap has changed over time, we can see that energy prices have been pretty much normalized, or high energy prices, sorry, have been pretty much normalized since the so-called pandemic. And although the so-called energy price guarantee made it seem like government stepped in to protect people from the excesses of the wholesale energy markets, in reality, they did no such thing, because while we didn't end up paying directly in our bills, the energy companies still got paid, and every taxpayer footed the bill. So remember that the energy cap sets the maximum price for each unit of energy, but not the total bill, which depends very much on how much energy we use. So this quoted figure of 1,755 per year is only indicative. The question remains, why are energy prices so high in the UK? Could it perhaps be to do with renewables and net zero? So let's bring this on screen then. This is Dieter Helm, because he's saying yes in a comment piece that he published yesterday. Why is the price of electricity so high, he asks. It's a puzzle, he says, because successive politicians, Blair, Cameron, May, Johnson, and now Starmer and Miliband, and lots of lobbyists have told us we should have expected quite the opposite: cheap energy to be achieved by getting out of fossil fuels, first exit coal, then bear down on gas, and a new era of cheap wind and solar would give the UK low absolute and relative electricity prices. And he concludes by saying, quotes, it's hard to conclude other than the Secretary of State is deluded when he champions the 2030 net zero target as a route to lower costs of energy through ever cheaper renewables. It's time to be honest about the costs of the net zero target. Now, Charles, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I would say deluded is not the word I would use. Willfully lying is much more likely, I think.
Absolutely, and this is borne out, in fact, in that there are demands both within and without the sector for further subsidisation of this very form of energy, in order that the price is artificially reduced, in order to create the impression that exactly this is happening, that it is becoming cheaper to use and cheaper than the more reliable traditional alternatives. So yes, absolutely. I think you're totally right. And the other point I would make is actually in terms of the cost. The other side of it, of course, is industry, and this is something that's come up or flared up a few times this year, specifically with regard to steel, where the government, again, is making out as though it's trying to preserve the steel industry in the United Kingdom. And this is not exclusive to steel, of course, but industry in general is absolutely penalised on the enormous costs of energy that it is having to pay directly as a result of what you're talking about.
Right.
Now, we'll go directly to a specific example now, because, Sandy, you have news for us on a development in Somerset.
Yes, this came to me. I read a magazine called The Leveller, which is a Somerset magazine, and this isn't an isolated thing. I mean, unfortunately, this is happening all over our country. An 80-acre solar farm is planned to be put up near Somerton, and it says here after it will apparently provide 40 years of power. And they said after 40 years, the site will be decommissioned and returned to its current state and arable use. Now, interestingly, I mean, that's the extent of it, the map there. It's huge. I mean, it's 80 acres. And this is happening all over our country. And it's taking the land out of food production for 30 to 40 years. And a lot of it, I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands of acres. And we're talking livestock here. Most of the land that these solar farms, they call them farms, which is funny because they're not farms at all, they're anti-farms. And they're being taken out. Food production is being taken out. Now, I looked at Oh, there's another issue that it says it will be restored to its former state, but that it also is questionable, because I did some work on risk assessments, and if solar panels are damaged in fire or severe storms or landfill crushing, the toxic compounds like cadmium and other trace minerals do leach into the ground, and even beyond chemistry, you've got soil compaction, loss of farmland, habitat changes, and herbicides used to control vegetation underneath. And actually, you cannot graze animals alongside the panels, because the farmers can't get insurance because the animals nibble the wires. So that is not an option. So it's taking out a lot of livestock grazing. That's the point I'm trying to make. Now, I looked at the National Planning Policy Framework document, which is really quite comprehensive. And what I realized is if you actually put a search into that and you look at the word food does not come up into it. Food production is simply not there. And there's four, but they're talking about all sorts of food takeaways and food outlets. There's no food security mentioned in this document. So it's quite interesting that food security is not in the equation. It's all about, they talk about environmentalism. It's not even environmentalism, it's anti-environmentalism, because it destroys landscapes. So interesting stuff there. Now, the next slide, please, is all about, the infrastructure, this is there's 13 protective security infrastructures that we have in this country, and food is one of them. And so this needs to be protected. We've got energy, water, food, transport, health, emergency services, government, defence, finance, telecommunications, space, civil, nuclear, and chemicals. So food is to be protected, but in no way is it in any of these documents from the government. We've got the UK Food Security Report, but if you open that up, there's nothing really much about food security for it's global food production they're talking about most of the time. It's all about global. It's not about the UK food security. So I did look at things like meat production. They did have a little bit on that, which was interesting, because beef production is the top one, and that went down very slightly because of obviously various animal health food scares, and health scares like BSE and foot and mouth and all those things. And then you've got two other diagrams there, which is I think that's chicken and pork, which went down because of the same thing, and also decarbonisation of meat processing plants. Lambs tended to stay pretty stable, and eggs went down as well. So everything as far as meat and dairy is going down very slowly, but this will impact more the more solar farms we have, because they'll be taken out of production. And that's the whole idea. And the next slide, I think, is the C40 cities. Yeah, the C40 cities slide, which actually says that the progressive target for 2030 is 16 kilograms of meat per person per year. And actually the ambitious target is 0 kilograms meat consumption. Now, we know they're not hitting their targets, because 2030 is, we've got 5 years. Are they going to make that happen? 5 years, no meat production at all? Probably they'll try, and that's what they're doing. So at the moment, farmers are being incentivized to give up their land to renewable energy, such as solar, wind and housing, rewilding, non-food production businesses. And this will reduce production significantly. So there's consideration for food security, which is currently at only about 60%, and it's declining. Our food production is declining. So if we weren't able to access imports, what will we do? We've got loads of solar panels that are making money for big investors, but and wind farms, but not the people. So if you do want to oppose this planning application, do try. I think you can go on to planning application. That is I'll put this in the show notes. And there's a planning application number or or code. And unfortunately, Somerset have spent 12 weeks now. They're not answering their phones, they're not answering emails because they've got a backlog of planning applications. What a surprise. And so they've closed down shop. So whether this will be slid in under the radar without people being able to oppose it, I don't know. Now, I'm going to look at quickly biodiversity net gain because a lot of people don't understand what it is. And again, there's another UK government guidance on it, biodiversity net gain. And this is a way of creating a financial instrument for land management people, big corporations to make money out as a financial instrument out of the land. Financialization of nature. And all the banks and the corporations make the money, not us. So here's a sort of idiot's guide to it, if you like. And so long as you actually there's a net loss if you just you just build, and then there's no net loss if you build and you add a few trees. And then with this one, you get net gain because you're not depleting the countryside and you're building and you're putting more trees up. So it's all about building and trees, not about food. And that's really quite interesting in that. So who needs to think about BNG? And we're looking at BNG really, it refers to the core groups, and BNG, it's developers. Developers will be required to submit biodiversity net gain so that it creates an income. And that's all it is. It's a big income for various sectors like land managers, big corporations, and banks, basically. So all of those make loads of money out of biodiversity net gain. It is a financial instrument, and we don't. It takes away our food production.
It does indeed, Sandy. Many scams running concurrently there, and you're quite right on the biodiversity net gain. Of course, the other thing to point out is that there's no requirement to have replaced before you destroy. So in effect, there's always an enormous lag, which is never really taken into account because it really concerns intent, which of course it shouldn't. I think the other thing to point out is as you quite rightly did, the absolute con about the suggestion that livestock would be able to graze in areas that there are solar panels, which of course might in certain situations be feasible, but you can't cut the grass if you want to in order to keep it for hay or any of those sorts of things. And again, the food security report that you referred to is something that the Labour government have absolutely put the brakes on. Having had a commitment written down in law to continue to update it, they have absolutely failed in that department, one assumes, because they do not want to report the true state of affairs, even if they know what that is. Now, we are going to